just move from one thing to another aimlessly. So we're in a mode and we're scrolling.
Yeah.
And on average, we can do about 300 feet worth of scrolling a day. But you don't have the phone, so maybe you perhaps is slightly
I still
less.
scroll through music and debates
and
stuff,
yeah, exactly right. So the problem with zombie scrolling is it can destroy your ability to have willpower. What it does is basically this. So have you ever had pure sugar cane?
No.
You know okay, you must have seen it.
Yeah, I haven't had
okay.
it.
Okay. So getting that sugar from the sugar cane is actually quite difficult. So what happens is you peel it off, you use your teeth. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of grind, and then you get some sugar.
Yeah.
So the amount of sugar that you're going to get from a sugar cane is very difficult to get that amount unless you're going to get it in a processed form. So if you go to say Starbucks or something and they're giving you sugar from fruits, they'll process everything in a way that you can drink it quite easily.
Yeah.
If you actually had to go to the fruit itself, like the sugar cane, it would take a lot more effort, it'd be a lot more laborious and difficult, and you'd only take in a bit of sugar.
Sure.
Okay? So that's the difference between the two.
Okay, so this is a metaphor.
This is a metaphor for the dopamine that we get when we're scrolling. So what usually happens is we'll get a dopamine spike when you achieve something, when you're about to achieve something. Say it's a degree or you want to go on a hike and you've completed it. Yeah. What we replace that with is something artificial. So rather than the sugar cane and the effort which brings you the sugar, what we do is we just scroll aimlessly and we get these dopamine spikes. Yeah. So our dopamine threshold goes higher and higher and higher. Then when we stop and we want to focus on something, we want to read something, what actually happens is we can't focus anymore. Okay. We lose the willpower to actually concentrate. And one of the aspects of social media scrolling is it shows you, especially with young people when they're on things like Instagram, it shows you people that are more beautiful than you, more healthier than you, more richer than you, high-end social status. Yeah.
I think you're preaching to the converted.
Okay.
I mean, yes, carry on. But
okay. Well, I was going to give the problem, reaction, and solution. So we have a problem. What is the normal reaction? And what I think is the solution, and I was going to compare the solution between Islam and atheism when it comes to this particular issue.
Run with it.
Okay. Cool. So we agree on the problem. Now the normal reaction...
Can I elaborate on the problem?
Sure, yeah, okay. Of course. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Jaron Lanier,
no.
He's one of the designers of virtual reality.
Okay.
You can see him talking on various podcasts. Very bright, interesting, nice guy. He says that the problem with the algorithm, which is underlying all of this stuff, is that for the first time we're not just looking at adverts are looking at us and studying us, and that the advert is just looking for a trigger, it's looking for when you respond to something it feeds you, and that the problem is that humans are hardwired to our negative instincts trigger instantly, our positive instincts take more time to gestate, and therefore the algorithm naturally reacts to our negative emotions more, and it ends up exacerbating them. So just the algorithm isn't trying to do a bad thing, and no one planned it, but it's just in the nature of its programming that it's making us tap more and more into negative instincts. And this is insidious with the internet. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, because he himself isn't pointing the finger at any bad guy. He's just going, be aware we've locked ourselves into this cycle, and yes, you're right, you need to break it. So we're concurrent.
Okay. I agree with you that sometimes these things happen incidentally. It's human nature mixing with the algorithm in a way that is detrimental, but it wasn't designed. However, there are instances where we have world governments who tune algorithms to damage other nations, but to make their own nations prosper. For example, the Chinese government, when it comes to TikTok, the TikTok that you get in outside of China, that you get in the United States, it's, people dancing, doing silly things, and the algorithm is pushing that kind of thing. But in China, it's actually cool engineering tricks. Sure. It's actually, they don't want their nation to be, watching people dance and do these silly types of things. So there is an element where you're correct, but there's also...
It can happen that governments will utilize it.
Yes, and especially, you have to remember, from an advertiser's point of view, they want you hooked on your phone. They want you to scroll, because the more you scroll, the more money they get.
Can we concur then? There may be bad actors exploiting this, but even if there weren't bad actors, the algorithm in and of its own nature is still detrimental to your psyche if you're freebasing. Do we agree?
Yeah, we agree on that. Right. And what we can also agree, a common denominator here is human nature.
Yeah.
So human nature, you can bring out the worst aspects of it through social media.
Sure.
And one of the things I want to highlight is materialism, right? So materialism, let's define it into subcategories. So it's the love of image, the love of looking a particular way, the love of status, having a particular social class that you belong to, and the third one is your wealth, the amount of money that you have.
Defining status as intrinsically connected with materialism.
I think
I'm not sure it's
okay. I believe status, the seeking of status, is a type of materialism.
Then I think maybe redefining terms to make them clearer in the beginning. I think you can be a I think the search for status. I like Jordan Peterson. Yeah, you know I'm a Peterson fan. The search for status is hardwired within us. We both agree we have human nature. We disagree on what it is, but we agree we have it. We're not postmodernists. And that the search for status is inevitable, and I think that would occur even in a non-materialist, non-capitalist framework. So I don't think they're quite as tightly bound as you think they are, but I know what you mean. They're often synonymous and go hand in hand.
Yeah, so maybe I need to define it a bit more deeply. Yeah. When it comes to the seeking of status, we as human beings, we like being respected, and and the higher we are in the social hierarchy, the better we feel. Yeah. The more happy chemicals are released, like serotonin and dopamine.
Yeah, we might be deceiving ourselves sometimes. Don't get head rushes.
But then the extreme side of it, and the side which is quite detrimental, is when people link their social status to their self-worth. So you find people on Instagram who'll take 20 minutes just to take a perfect photo. Yeah. You'll find teenagers in depression because their social media posts aren't doing as well as they did in the past. Sure. Things like this, right? So that is a type of materialism. That's my point.
We pick a different word. We don't have to. I'm nitpicking.
Sure.
I mean, okay. What you're saying is it's cosmetic and superficial. Yes?
Yeah.
Can we agree on that?
Yeah, we do.
The internet makes things more cosmetic and more superficial, and then channels that. We have an inherent instinct for status, but it distracts our attention to superficial qualities of status rather than the more profound and important aspects.
Exactly. And exactly. And the same thing can apply to the Islamic concept of worship. So we believe all human beings have a affinity, have a desire for worship. And we can misuse that by worshipping other human beings, making celebrities our guide, making our desires our God. We can make it into something positive by actually worshipping God. So it's the same instinct, but it's being misused in certain aspects and being properly used in certain aspects as well.
Are we on Fitra? We're talking Fitra?
Yeah.
Because I'm a fan of Fitra. Fitra is a working concept.
Okay.
It's not specific to Islam. I hope we'd agree on that. I think Fitra is common throughout numerous religions, and what it's saying is A, you have a nature, and B, that nature is at some level intrinsically good or moral. It has a moral compass built into it.
Yeah, it's broader than that, but I'll explain a little.
I'm looking. Is that a common agreement? We agree on it to that extent.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe if I explain it from a different perspective. So the Fitra is not saying only Muslims have Fitra, or only Muslims can speak about Fitra. Fitra is I mean, the closest English definition would be an innate disposition.
Yeah.
So we believe an innate disposition existed before the prophets, like the Prophet Muhammad, or peace be upon him, or the Prophet Jesus, were even on earth.
Right.
That the Fitra has always been there. It's something innate.
Now, I'm agreeing with you in principle, and I hope it's true. I'm not convinced it is, but I hope it is.
Sure.
And it seems like a tenable idea, and I like it.
Sure.
I think it's the best possible scenario.
Sure. I do want to make a distinction though. The Fitra is not an argument for God.
Correct.
The Fitra is a paradigm from which a person looks at the world.
Yeah, it's your. Why are we then disagreeing? I would say it's your moral compass. It's your teleological and moral compass.
I think it's broader than. Yeah, I think it's more than moral.
Okay, can we agree that at minimum it's a moral compass? It may have more properties than that, but can we at least concur that one of its properties is that it gives you a moral compass?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is. I mean, you can't have a Fitra without morality.
Excellent.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
we disagree on some of its properties, but
sure,
we agree on that.
Sure. Now, for a long time in the sciences, as you know, what Peterson's been attacking is the standard social science model, right? The blank slate model. That we essentially don't have a human nature, we essentially don't have a Fitra, we essentially don't have these innate dispositions. Everything is cultural, right?
That wouldn't be Darwinian, though, would it? In the Darwinian model, we do have a nature.
From an evolutionary psychology point of view, they do believe that there is a human nature and the blank slate model is wrong. They do believe that.
Right, so in that sense, you guys, theists and atheists, Darwinian atheists, are in the same camp, which is interesting, because the postmodernists are not, and I think that line is very important.
That's a very important observation you made, because that is true.
Find the common ground,
yeah.
Work with it as much as you can.
Yeah, there is a commonality there, but the difference would be the causal explanations on both accounts would be different. So say, for example, someone like Steven Pinker, they would look at our affinity to be good or our belief in God, and he'll give it a explanation in terms of natural selection. Sure. What we would do is we'd give it an explanation in terms of God. So that's where the distinction would be. But the phenomena itself would be observed by both camps.
Right, so we agree on the phenomena, we agree on that common ground, we're going to disagree on how we describe it.
Yeah.
I come from a platform where I think religion is primarily prescriptive, not descriptive. Sorry, so we'd describe its function differently, but I think actually description is secondary to the function of religion. But that, I don't want to open that debate, sorry.
Okay, sure, just a little question about that. So are you basically saying, in a way that religion is, if you like, metaphorically true but literally false? Because that is
I think that occurs, and that can be okay, and that's not a reason to chuck your religion away at all.
Sure.
It's fine.
So would you subscribe to, say, the ideas of Brett Weinstein when he talks about this concept that we should treat religion as something good, not
necessary fiction?
Yes. I mean, are you aware of his ideas?
Yeah, I think if we're talking that one, the idea of a necessary fiction, I think he uses, or Harris uses, the idea of a gun, where you go, you should always act as though the gun has a bullet in, even when you know it isn't. It's a constructive fiction, which you know the gun hasn't got a bullet in, but you still act as though it does. And I think that's a useful metaphor.
Right.
So, yeah, I think religion is metaphorically very often true, including Islam. When it takes itself too literally, I think it becomes more problematic. And I think the conservative strand of Islam that I believe you represent, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's taken it too far to its own detriment. But the core ideas, hopefully you can see we agree on. Certainly Fitra, I think there's profound things to be defended here. And so I'm more in favour of a more progressive view of religion, which I know isn't your position.
I get that, but at the same time, you're subscribed to a particular school in that case, which is that you describe the phenomena in naturalistic terms, and therefore, like Weinstein and Pinker and others, you would actually be you'd be looking at the instrumental value of religion, but the intrinsic value you'd write off.
I've seen this, yeah, I can see how it looks that way, but I hope I'm squaring the circle and I'm not seeing it that way.
Sure.
I'm not saying that the utility of this grounds out in some kind of societal benefit at some terrestrial level. I believe something very different, but you know what? I appreciate you giving me time to expound on my views.
Because you sound really well thought out.
How about we cover yours, because you came here with let's do your one first, and then if we get the space,
sure. But just hold that thought then. Yeah, because I'm genuinely, because I learn a lot from you actually. I've had a few conversations. So, why I was talking about zombie scrolling earlier is because essentially there's aspects of human nature which are accelerated, the negative aspects which are accelerated because of social media, and this leads to depression. Now there's a lot of studies that show that social media is leading to depression, especially with young people. Now I believe Islam is a solution to zombie scrolling, and I believe atheism or materialism or some sort of agnosticism actually makes it worse by not giving an answer.
It's a very general dichotomy. I see where you're coming from.
Okay.
I think it's possible to platform moral and teleological platforms from an atheistic platform like Harris does. I'm also a fan of Harris.
Right.
But I take your point.
Sure.
I think religion gives people teleology and meaning and purpose, and
value.
That value is essential.
Yeah.
Absolutely essential in the heart of this.
Yeah.
I mean, Fitra is a value judgment. It's all about value judgment.
Fitra gives you a value.
Okay, yeah. It's
to make judgments.
But it's in that dimension.
Yeah. Okay, we're not really disagreeing where you're about to see me take the argument. So, shall I extrapolate?
Are you better off dedicating more time to the 5 pillars and less time to scrolling? The answer is yes.
Okay.
If that's your point, yes.
Yeah, it is actually.
Okay, great. Because I think, as I said, prescriptively, that's religion's primary thing, and all the 5 pillars I think are very strong.
Okay.
I think you see them in other religions as well. I often respect greatly the way a lot of Muslims I see locally, they really are very diligent and they adhere. To pray 5 times a day is a significant thing for 10 years. That's 2.5 years of your life. Yeah, I mean, to obey Ramadan and so on again requires diligence, and I think these prescriptions automatically illuminate and clarify one's perception, and they're common to numerous religions.
Sure. So, what trait do you think something like Ramadan brings out in Muslims, which can actually help them enlighten themselves in other areas of their life?
Well, as I said, I think religion, I think the objective of Fitra, in my sense, with a small f, is to see reality as clearly as possible. That's what religious pursuit is about. And when you deny yourself food for a while, you are subsuming yourself to a higher principle and using discipline, which is good for character and Fitra. And simultaneously, you're realizing the value of the thing that you take for granted. That's the second thing, which makes you see reality more clearly, because you become blurred and immune to the reality and you see heightened things, so it resensitizes your vision. Thirdly, I think it helps you to empathize with people who are starving, because you go, oh, this is what it feels like. So on those three levels,
Sure.
It's an asset in whatever religion it's being applied,
Sure.
and it should be respected.
Okay, and no, that's a very good observation. I just wanted to add the Quranic paradigm on this, which is that something like fasting between morning and sunset, where you restrain yourself from food and water and other things that are normally allowed. The purpose of that is for you to have God mindfulness, to be God conscious, because God consciousness is something that can destroy zombie scrolling. God consciousness is something that can stop, I believe, world wars. It can stop greediness in the world. It can stop people hoarding stuff during COVID.
Yeah.
And God consciousness, I believe, and I think Peterson says this, I could be wrong, but even if someone doesn't believe in God, the value of having God consciousness will make the world a better place.
Yeah, he says you are the value you act out, not the value that you describe, which again is why I'm saying it's prescriptive, not descriptive.
Right.
If you're describing yourself one way but acting another, the way you act is more indicative of where you're at than what you say. So my issues with religions tend to be is at generally the descriptive level and over-literalism.
Sure, good. Now, just to add to this, I don't know whether you subscribe to this argument, but I'm just going to put forward this argument, right? So when in my talks, I talk about induction, underdetermination, problem of unconceived alternatives, how science is instrumental, but it doesn't give you absolutes, it doesn't give you truth. An atheist, a Darwinist in particular, may say something like, well, it works, so it's true, okay? Now, I haven't completed the argument, but I don't agree with that argument.
Yeah.
However, somebody who says it works, therefore it's true, should be consistent logically, because if religion works, then it should also be true.
Agree.
According to their logic.
Agree.
What do you think of that?